All right, fantastic. Well, so welcome. Hello, my name is Matt Williams. I'm a tutor in politics and what's known as the Access Fellow at Jesus College at the University of Oxford. This is the fourth, I think, time we've run one of these online summer schools. The first of which was a COVID-related sort of necessity because a summer school that was meant to happen at the University of Yale had to be cancelled last minute. And so we stepped in and produced an online summer school. And it turned out that this was so successful at encouraging and helping young people to make confident choices with their higher education that we were very happy to continue it. The Welsh Government were very happy to continue it. And so here we are in 2023, very much post-pandemic, but still utilising some of the best bits of this model to help you make the best informed, most confident decisions about your life. So that is the ultimate goal. But obviously, we should start by saying croeso and welcome and a few hellos. So you've heard from me, so I will be quiet now, but I know that we've got Molly and Hannah on, who are our fabulous coordinators, and they've got a few bit of housekeeping points to say, but also would like to say hello. And then we've got Alice Roberts, who's got a really exciting and interesting research project that she would like to talk about. So if I hand over to Hannah and Molly first of all, and then we'll go over to Alice, please.
Hello everyone, how are we this morning? I'm Molly. I'm the coordinator for SIOSS this year, along with Hannah. I've spoken to a few of you already about a few things, so it's lovely to see some faces popping up today. If you need anything at all during the summer school, Hannah and I are literally just an email or a message on Sarah and Space away. Our job is to make sure you're having a really good time, so that's all we can wish for. With regards to sessions, I know a few of you have asked if you've registered to a certain stream, can you go to others? We do actually encourage that, so anything that you feel is interesting or beneficial to you, you could definitely go to there. And all the pre-recorded sessions as well, they're for you on demand, so you can watch them at any point. We have timetabled them in, but of course there's a lot of flexibility. So I'm going to hand you over to Hannah now.
Yeah, so hi everyone, my name is Hannah, and like Molly said, I am one of the coordinators for the summer school. It's great to see such a good turnout here this morning, and we're really excited to sort of get things going this week. Like Molly said, any questions or queries you've got, please direct them our way and we will do our best to help you. And yeah, we've really done our best to sort of make the timetable as interesting and as exciting as possible for you. And we've got a range of instructors doing sessions from all different universities, from all different subjects. So we really hope that you get the most out of this week. And yeah, really can't wait to get this week started.
Brilliant. Thanks so much, Molly and Hannah. And Alice, do you mind telling us a bit more about your project, please?
Of course, thanks. Good morning, everyone. It's so exciting. I can't wait for the next 2 weeks. I think it's going to be, I've just had a nosy at all the sessions running and I think it looks amazing. So I think we're in for a treat. I'm one of the instructors this week, but another job I'm doing this summer is coordinating and being an assistant on a research project from the University of Cambridge. And I just thought it would be a really good opportunity to share it with the participants of this summer school. So basically it's run by the School of Arts and Humanities, and they're funding this project to make sure that the undergraduate offer at Cambridge is as exciting and relevant as it could be. So they really want to hear from your voices, so they need your opinions to sort of formulate the best way forward. So I thought, what a better way to sort of put the link out there. So if you are interested, you can come along to one of our online focus groups, which are going to be running in the afternoons next week. So they won't clash with any of the summer school offerings. But I think, yeah, it could be a really good chance for you to sort of express some of your opinions about why you're choosing to go to university if you are, and what sort of subjects you're looking at studying and why. So I'm just going to, I should add, you don't have to be wanting to apply to Cambridge to join us, but a rough interest in the arts and humanities would be great. So I'm just going to drop in the link to express your interest in the chat, if that's okay. But Molly will also be sending an email out this afternoon. So yeah, I'm sure I'll speak to you guys again in the week. But yeah, enjoy the week and make the best of it. Thanks so very much, Matt.
No, thank you. That sounds really cool. I mean, you could have an influence on Cambridge University undergraduate degrees. So yeah, take advantage of that. Fantastic. I know there are some other of our instructors on the call this morning. I'm not going to pick on anyone, but if you'd like to say hello, do just use the raise hand function, because we'd be very pleased to hear from you, but don't want to put you under any sort of undue pressure if you'd rather not. Yes, Thomas, please.
Hiya, just to introduce myself, my name's Thomas. I'm on the humanities stream, but a lot of my work is interdisciplinary, so I do a lot of applied ethics, so I veer into social sciences quite a bit by just the nature of what I talk about. Like the border ethics lecture that is pre-recorded is very much philosophically minded, but it deals with a social science issue, if that makes sense. So pop along to any of my lectures or live sessions. I'm running a live session after this, and then I also have a drop-in later. Feel free to drop in if you have any questions.
Brilliant, thanks, Thomas. And you're a returning veteran. Your sessions last year took on near legendary status, so definitely go along.
Thank you.
Right. We've also got another veteran, Firiel. Hi, Firiel.
Morning. I'm not sure if you can hear me.
Yep, all good.
Yeah, okay. I've been having difficulties, that's why I entered late, but it's so lovely to see you all, and I'm looking forward to this summer. My name is Ferry. I'm just going to introduce myself quickly. I'm a master's student at Cardiff University doing my translation studies, and I'm going to share with you this summer what I've learned so far from my uni. So I just summed it up in a few lectures, and looking forward to interact with you on the seminars. Yeah, that's it from me, but it's nice seeing you all. Thank you.
It's nice seeing you too, Firiel. Thanks for that. And we've got Priyal.
Yes, hello. My name is Priyal. As you can probably tell, I'm from the US. I go to the University of Florida. So I'm just calling in super early to just pop in and say hello and say I'm super excited to meet you all and work with you all.
Wow, that is awesome commitment, Priyal, getting up that early. I would really appreciate that. Thank you so much. And we've got another veteran, Karis, who's worked on several in-person and online summer schools. So it's lovely to have you back as well.
Yeah, hi guys, I'm Karis, and I'm going to be instructing on the maths, physics and the life science stream. So I've actually got the first seminar in about 50 minutes. So looking forward to seeing you on that stream very, very soon. And I've just finished my degree in Earth Sciences at Oxford. It's super interdisciplinary, so hopefully, whether or not you're interested in Earth Sciences, hopefully have some interesting discussions over the next 2 weeks. Yeah, looking forward to meet you all.
And you're kicking off with life on other planets, something like that? Is that right?
How to build a habitable planet. So
Okay.
looking at how we've made our Earth habitable.
Okay.
Not us. Yeah.
Very cool. And Gito, another legend, another veteran.
Hi, good morning, everyone. I'm Gito. I'm just finishing my undergraduate degree at King's in London. I'm on the social sciences and law stream. I won't go into too much detail because I'm also starting the first seminar this morning, so I'm sure I'll get a chance to meet all of you, and I look forward to working with all of you.
Brilliant, thanks, Gito. And your session's on Israel-Palestine, I believe, which is never an irrelevant subject, and it seems to be particularly important at the moment. So that sounds great. All right, brilliant. Well, thanks to all of you for coming along and saying hi, and thanks for everyone else for attending. So I'll go back to the slides just because we've got a few more things to whip through before we can get started officially. So as you can see, we've got tutors from various different countries and various different universities. So here's all of the universities that are represented on the summer school, starting off with the University of Cambridge, of course. And there's going to be spotlight sessions on each of these universities. So if you're interested in applying to any of these, you should hop along and talk to some current and former students about what they think. Got the University of Cardiff nicely represented this week as well. So again, perhaps, you know, a university close to home for most of you could be worth having a look at what could be possible there, including taking studies in the Welsh language. Then we've got the University of Durham, another very old collegiate university in the UK. Sadly, the Google Earth images are not three-dimensionally rendered for Durham, I'm afraid, so it's not a very flattering view of that. Then we've got to whip across to the University of Florida. I suspect that these Google images are not at all flattering, so apologies to Priyal and the other University of Florida team. I'm sure Google can do a much better job of that. But nonetheless, the University of Florida is in a fantastic location, and it'd be great to hear what opportunities you could have to study in the US more generally. And then we've got King's College London, represented ably by Guito, as just mentioned, right at the heart of London. You can see the Thames looking sort of glitteringly brown in this image. It looks a lot better in real life. I'm sure these sort of LiDAR pictures don't necessarily do everywhere that much justice. Then we've got the fantastically situated University of Manchester, also well represented at this summer school. And then we've got to hop down to where's next? Oh, it's all in alphabetical order. So then it's Oxford, okay, which is where I am speaking to you from right now. And this is the oldest university represented of the bunch, but age doesn't really matter a great deal. I think you'll recognise. And then we've got the amazingly located seaside University of St Andrews, which, as you can see, is a literal stone's throw away from the North Sea. And last but by no means least, we've got the University of Warwick, which is not actually in Warwick, but it's kind of between Warwick and Coventry. But there it is. All right. Oh, sorry, ignore that. So there we go. These are our universities represented. But generally speaking, there are instructors and coordinators who have a lot of experience of attending universities and applying to lots of universities. And so it's their job to help you. So make sure you make the most of it. So in terms of what's coming up, effectively, the way we've structured this is that you will be able to live life as if you're already a university student. Because what happens at university is that you will have a curriculum, but it will be much more loosely structured than you perhaps will have been used to at school. And so there will be a much greater opportunity for you to pick lectures to attend and seminars and work out what sort of things take your interest. Now, that is less often the case for the STEM degrees, is science, technology, engineering, and maths. But even within those degrees, as you go through your studies, you get a much greater degree of choice than you would do as an A-level student. And so it's that sense of following your nose and exploring what you're passionate about, which we want to provide for you in the following 2 weeks. Okay. And the reason for this is in part because it should be incredibly enjoyable, but in a more sort of instrumental sense, it's very, very useful, right? Because these are incredibly helpful super curricular experiences. So every day there will be about 10 to 20 opportunities of stuff that you could write about on your personal statement should you wish to. So these are really high quality university level experiences that you can reflect on and talk about in your personal statement should you wish to. They could also just provide a launch pad for you to go and explore certain ideas in greater depth that you find interesting that you would very, very seldom come across in the course of your regular school studies. So that's the general ambition. And you will have had access to the timetable on Seren Space, and it looks absolutely incredible. Every year I'm blown away by the quality of the sessions that the instructors come up with, but they've absolutely outdone themselves this year. If I had the time, I would attend all of these sessions, and I'm certainly going to watch a lot of the catch-up material on demand later because it just looks brilliant. This is exactly the sort of stuff that you could have at a university. That's why university is so stimulating, such a wonderful opportunity to just find out more about the world and about what other people think and to develop your skills. So that's exactly what we've provided. I strongly encourage that you attend the drop-in sessions and any opportunities you have to talk to people. One of the slight risks of an on-demand online summer school is that you could just become a passive sort of consumer without actively contributing. And that is the bit where the summer school doesn't quite fully recreate university life, because university is not just about being a consumer, it's about being a producer, right? You have to actually come up with some ideas at university. So as far as you're able to do so, I would strongly recommend that you do attend the drop-in sessions, that you attend any seminars, any interactive components, because sharing your thoughts, even if those thoughts are partially formed and could do with a little refinement, that's fine, right? By the way, everyone's views are partly formed and can do with refinement, right? So just showing that willingness to try out your ideas and receive some feedback is very, very healthy, and it will massively improve your standing in things like interviews, should you have to take any interviews for your studies, or indeed personal statements where you would have to do that sort of self-reflection as well. Okay, but we understand that a lot of you have busy lives. Some of you might be traveling at the moment, some of you might have jobs or work experience placements, or some of you may even still be attending school. So that's why it's designed to be as flexible as possible. So if you can't attend any of the in-person sessions, there's nothing to feel guilty about. That's, you know, part of the design rationale is to be as accessible as possible. Okay, so a few sort of housekeeping points. I mean, first of all, and sort of quite importantly, is your safety. We want to make sure that no one feels threatened or unreasonably uncomfortable at any time during the summer school. If you do feel that there has been an incident that has troubled you in any way, do please communicate that with Molly, Hannah, or myself as soon as you feel able to do so. We have put in place various safeguards to ensure the safety of everyone who's involved with this. But of course, there could be some instances where something could go wrong. I wouldn't over sort of analyze what a breach of your sort of safety looks like. If you just feel particularly and acutely uncomfortable from something that has happened, just let us know and we'll sort it out to the best of our abilities. Okay, other housekeeping things to consider is that there is some work that you can do. So you can produce a capstone project, very much on the can rather than must sort of modal verb here. It's not obligatory that you produce the work, but if you do produce the capstone project, you will get a certificate and you will have something particularly sort of notable to mention on your personal statements. Okay. Also, just from a general sort of perspective, if you want to learn something, making sure that you write down your ideas will always reinforce your learning. It'll improve your memory, it'll refine your thinking, it'll just improve everything. So that's why, you know, teachers force you to write so many reports or essays or posters or what have you. It is very, very useful. So I would strongly encourage you to do so and to go to the drop-in sessions if you have any difficulties with the work itself, or if you have any questions about submission. Ultimately, submission should go to Molly or Hannah via email, and then they will distribute your projects to your teaching assistants so that we can work out some tutorials for you, so you can sit down and have a good old chat about your work. You also have the potential to chat about your work with experts from the University of Oxford next Thursday, so a week Thursday, which is the 27th of July. This is a very fun, relaxed opportunity to just throw some ideas around. This is not an opportunity for some experts at Oxford to rip you apart and belittle you and make you feel sad and uncomfortable. Okay, we would never do that to you. I can understand it might be quite intimidating as an A-level student to present some of your ideas to people that are, you know, postdoctoral researchers at the University of Oxford. Some of them are professors, but they are very, very friendly people. And the thing is, the further you go down the track of studying stuff, the more sort of open-minded you tend to become, because you recognize how sort of fundamentally unknowable much of the universe is. So it's not the case that you get these sort of very seasoned professors who turn around and say, oh, I know everything, whatever you're saying is absolute rubbish, because they're much more likely to think, I don't know what's going on. The universe is so complicated, it's so weird, it's magnificent, but I don't really have a clue. So they will be very open-minded, they'll be very friendly, and they are there to help you develop your ideas, right? So it's definitely something that's well worth getting involved with. I'll send some more details about how you can get in, how you can sign up for that and get involved very shortly, but keep an eye out because that will be a really worthwhile thing to be part of, I'm sure. Okay, the other thing is, of course, just sort of take aware of what is going on in the timetable. It's obvious, fairly obvious, that one. But if you have any questions or concerns, do get in touch, because we want to make sure that this experience is as useful as possible for you. You can email me at any time as a consequence. You should also have the contact details for Molly and Hannah, but don't sort of worry, don't think about whether you should or shouldn't contact me. It's absolutely fine. We've got quite a lot of people and quite a lot going on, so I won't necessarily fire back a response within a millisecond, but I will try and get back to you as quickly as possible. And we want to make sure this is as helpful as possible. Okay, what is your target? Well, I mean, I suppose you could say your target is producing a piece of work, should you wish to. Again, don't have to, but should you wish to produce that capstone project. But there's a more sort of general target, which should be to learn something new, right? I mean, you're probably going to learn something new every 5 minutes over the course of this summer school, because the content is going to be so rich and detailed and interesting. So that should be a fairly easy goal. Okay, but you could learn something new about yourself, which is perhaps a slightly wider ambition, but totally achievable. Okay, you could, for example, learn about what you're capable of. All right, because a lot of people tend to sort of undermine their own capabilities. They don't necessarily think very highly of themselves. For example, we've done surveys of Oxford and Cambridge students, and about 90% report some form of imposter syndrome, which is the sense that they don't necessarily belong. And I would imagine that that sense of not being sure you're good enough is very common at every university, right? Not just Oxford and Cambridge. I suppose what was slightly surprising is just how high a proportion that was. 90%, so almost everyone at Oxford and Cambridge felt that they weren't the right person, they shouldn't necessarily be there. And that is incorrect. I mean, we spend 20 person hours on every application for Oxford, and it's very similar for Cambridge. So the idea that someone would have snuck through is basically incorrect. But that sort of general feeling of not being as good as you could be is very, very common amongst young people. And I think one of my ambitions for this summer school is to help you understand just how incredible you are by dint of being a human being, if nothing else, right? I mean, human beings are absolutely mesmerically capable of intellectual feats. And there isn't much of a role to play in genetics, in sort of determining who's going to be the most intelligent person in the world. It actually has much more to do with your habits, a bit of luck, of course, the context within which you're living, and how sort of determined you are, how much you're willing to do. But if you constantly sort of go around with a narrative of, well, I can't do this, I can't do this, I can't do this, then you won't do it. You won't do things that could actually enhance your capabilities. Whereas if you go around and you say, hang on a minute, I'm a human being, and if I'm a human being, I've got basically the same kit as every other human being, then I'm probably capable of way more than I realize. I mean, for example, if I was to take a grain of sand's worth of your brain, which I definitely won't because it'd be super unethical, but if I took a grain of sand's worth of your brain, that would contain 1,000 terabytes of memory space. 1,000 terabytes! That's 2,000 of these laptops that I'm talking to you right now. That's just one grain of sand. Okay, that's enough storage capacity for every film that's ever been produced in human history, right? The whole brain is 2.5 petabytes, which is roughly equivalent to 40,000 iPhones. Okay, so you're packing 40,000 iPhones worth of just compute in your skull, which is astonishing, right? You have more brain cells in your gut than a cat has in its head. So now you might be thinking, whoa, I can't remember the film I saw last night, let alone every film that's ever been produced in human history. And that would be a fair sort of thing to say. But what our brain is doing is constantly providing this incredible suite of services for us, like coloring in the entire universe. The universe isn't colored in, but our brain colors it in for us, and it creates all of the other sensations like smell and sound and touch and all these other things. Obviously, we have inputs which stimulate those sensations, but the actual sensation, the actual feeling of it is all produced by the brain, which is also, of course, inverting all of the images that come into our head as well, because they get flipped by the lens in our eyes. So your brain is a truly magnificent organ, the most complex thing in the universe as far as we are aware. And we're only aware of everything from the brain itself. So respect your brain. Okay, it's quite common for people not to necessarily respect their own abilities. But if nothing else, your default should be take a breath. I'm a human being. I've got one of those insane brains because of me being a human being. There's very, very little chance that my brain is not as capable as someone else's, because genetics plays very little role in someone's intelligence. So I'm probably much more capable than I give myself credit for. Okay, and so if you go into some of these sessions and you're struggling to understand things, that's not because you're not intelligent, that's not because you're stupid, that's none of those things. It's just because you haven't you haven't encountered this sort of stuff before. You perhaps don't have the conceptual framework to deal with it yet. That is not your fault. Okay, it's not really anyone's fault. It's just something that you will have to work around. So some things you'll find easier, some things you'll find harder. But going through all of this and saying, I found this stuff harder because I'm stupid, that's just self-harm. That's not going to help you. I mean, it's the sort of thing I've been saying to myself my whole adult life, and I'm now just finally sort of realizing that it has done me nothing but harm. Okay, so one of the core messages that I want to spread throughout this next 2 weeks is just respect yourself. And if you struggle to respect yourself on any basis other than the fact that you are a human being, then that's fine. You know, as a human, you are insanely capable. All right, and you can't take that away from yourself. Oh, pardon me. Excuse me. So the next thing that you could learn is your passion. Now, some of you may already have a passion. Some of you may not, and that's okay, that's fine. Some of you may even struggle to understand what a passion is, which would be an excellent question in itself. You know, how do we know if we are passionate about something? And what sort of tips over from being sort of mildly curious to being downright sort of obsessed about something? So that the concept of passion is fluid and cloudy and not terribly easy to understand. But nonetheless, we need to have a think about passions, because passions will take you very far, right? Again, the most sort of academically successful people are the people that do it through love, do it because they care about it, right? Not because they are forced to do it. Okay, Einstein said this himself. He said that he used to study his mathematics for hours on end because of a sense of love, not duty. And that is just a fundamental truism, that if you are doing things as a consequence of desire and motivation, you'll do them better. But then the question becomes, well, you know, do you find a passion, or does a passion find you, or do you make passions and sort of construct them? I mean, honestly, no one's entirely sure. Passion is such a sort of ethereal concept that it's very difficult to sort of pin it down and sort of say, right, here's the checklist, do this, and your passion will burst out. Okay, but one of the worst things you can do is to sort of say, I'm not a passionate person, I will never find anything that I find interesting, because again, you're sort of denying your own humanity. You're sort of saying, I'm probably not as human as that other human, and that's why my brain doesn't work the way they do. That's implausible, right? It's completely implausible. So you just need to sort of chill, not be so hard on yourself, and say, right, well, what can I do in order to develop a passion? And if it takes a while, so be it, but it will happen. Okay, so try and work out what sort of things give you that little wisp of dopamine, because that's ultimately what we're talking about. If you want to make it scientific, passion is that sort of slight sort of thrill of dopamine. Again, dopamine is a sort of chemical signal that flows around your body when you're finally sort of receive something that you've been waiting for. So it's, you know, sometimes described as a way to encourage animals, not just humans, to stick out various arduous tasks. So our Neolithic ancestors, when they went out hunting, they would be waiting for days on end to, you know, get a decent meal. And when that meal finally arrived, they would not only feel satiated by the food, but they would get a nice old hit of dopamine, which would encourage them to do it again next time. Okay, if they didn't have the dopamine, they might sort of think, well, that was a really hard few weeks. I don't want to do that again. I guess I'll just eat berries now for the rest of my life. Okay, so that's what dopamine's all about. It's about rewarding ourselves for persistence, for delayed gratification. Okay, and there will have been some things that you will have encountered, because the human brain is so curious that there will definitely have been some facts or ideas that you encountered and you thought, ooh, you're right, it gave you that little same sort of thrill that you would get when someone likes a post of yours on Instagram, or when a friend of yours sort of comments kindly on what you're wearing, right? These are all examples of a little dopamine release, the thing you've been waiting for finally coming back to you. Okay, so just chase that dopamine, chase it, see where it takes you, and be sort of amazed by what could have caused it, what could have created it, because it's a wonderful mystery of human nature that, for various reasons, probably mainly social, we've been sort of conditioned to find some things interesting and other things leave us a little bit cold. Okay, so just follow your nose. Once you find something that grabs you, follow you, and then you'll be able to prove that you have a passion. And this becomes really important, because when you're writing a personal statement, or if you're in an interview, you need to credibly say that you have done stuff that takes you above and beyond your school curriculum. That evidence is absolutely essential. Okay, I've read thousands of personal statements, many of which say something along the lines of, I'm very passionate about medicine, or I can't wait to study human sciences. And that's absolutely fine, but you need some proof for that, right? You can't just say, I'm desperate to study human sciences, but give no evidential backing for why you're desperate to study human sciences. So if you could say, I'm desperate to study human sciences, and on a summer school I attended, there was a session on X, Y, and Z, and this helped me understand about anthropology or biology or whatever. Now you've got some proof, now you've got some evidence, and you've got 2 weeks of evidence lined up for you, right? So go and find some proof of stuff that you're passionate about, all right? But don't get too sort of anxious about whether or not you are passionate, because you're a human being. There is bound to be passion somewhere. You are bound to have dopamine released from some of the topics that will be covered. Okay, another thing to think about is your own thinking. This is called metacognition, which is a monstrous bit of jargon for something that's pretty straightforward, which is just thinking about your thinking, which is totally possible, right? Your mind is so capable, your 40,000 iPhones worth of squashy material between your ears is so capable that it can hold parallel thoughts. And indeed, it can reflect the thoughts of one thought over another. It's just mad, right? I mean, I'm currently thinking about what I'm saying, and I'm thinking about how I'm thinking about it. That's incredible, right? I mean, we can't program computers yet to be quite so sort of intricate. So your capacity to think about your own thinking is really interesting. It's also really valuable, because then you can tune it up, right? Thinking is fundamentally a skill. It's not a gift. Okay, insofar as it is a gift, it's a gift that every human being has, pretty much. I mean, of course, obviously some human beings have special learning needs, which might make certain levels of thinking impossible for them, but the vast majority of the rest of the human race have exactly the same thinking capabilities, but some use them and others don't, and there's no particular sort of reason to wonder why some would and some wouldn't. So the key point is that thinking is a skill, and you can improve it. And one of the best ways of improving it is to observe it, to notice how you think. So I've got a little test for you all, just to keep you get you warmed up on this Monday morning. I want you to take a look at this image, okay, and just say what you can see. You don't need to literally say it out loud, although you can drop into the comments what you can see here. Now, I've deliberately chosen a very mundane day-to-day item for this little bit of metacognition practice. So if you're just sort of screaming in your head or out loud, this is salad, that's fine. But try and sort of notice as many details as possible, right? Try and get into the little intricacies of this image. Right, I'll stop jabbering and you can have a look. Okay, so All good, right? We've taken some sort of observations of this sort of ferociously mundane meal. Now, in order to sort of do a bit of metacognition, what you need to start by doing is sort of saying to yourself, why did I look at that first, right? Why did my mind pick up on, let's say, the way the vegetables were cut up, or the glass bowl and where it was positioned, or the choice of contents for the salad? Why did my mind go there first? Okay, because what happens in the initial sort of rush of a stimulus is that your brain goes into what's called system one thinking, which is sort of highly automated, because our brains are well set up to deal with data very efficiently in order to hopefully keep us alive, right? So if, for example, you were in any danger, your brain would be able to sort of come up with some solutions to that danger, most often just leg it very, very quickly, right? So your initial sort of brain processing tends to be dominated by what's loosely called system one thinking. Okay, highly automated. At universities, we encourage you to go into a bit more system two thinking, which is a bit more deliberative, a bit more sort of careful and measured. And you have to actually sort of kind of encourage your brain to do that, because it's not the default. At least it's not the default for adults, but it is the default for children. Okay, so one thing to note is that we quite literally, I would say, teach students at universities to think more like children. Now, this sounds sort of wildly counterintuitive, so hear me out. Basically, what do young children do? They don't necessarily assume they know anything. They tend to ask lots of really good questions, and they think quite carefully and deliberately about the world around them. Whereas adults have sort of quite fixed ideas about the world, and they tend to just impose those ideas on new data. So rather than actually thinking, they're just sort of processing, if you like. Children, however, are much better thinkers often. And so that's why children around the age of 5 will tend to ask questions like, why is the sky blue? And my own 6-year-old, Teddy, asked me, why is gold yellow? Which is a good question. He then ruined my evening one day by asking, does your phone get heavier when you download apps onto it? Now, the reason that ruined my evening is because I then had to just study quantum physics for 5 hours to find out the answer, because it was such a good question. I had no idea. Like, right, great. I have to find out the answer to this. Turns out, thanks to Einstein, E equals mc squared, that my phone probably does attain mass when I put new apps onto it, because you change the E, you change the energy, and so you probably change the mass. Not by much, obviously. But still, I thought that was super interesting. And it's exactly the sort of thing I'm talking about, right? I use my phone, once every 5 minutes or something alarming every day. And I never thought of that, because I'm an adult. So I'm sort of constant system one thinking, how do I survive? How do I just process data in order not to die? Whereas a child is like, oh, what's that? What's going on here? It's that like that old game, Born Yesterday, where you're just asking questions about literally everything. And that's actually really healthy. That sort of toddler mindset of just complete wide-eyed openness and curiosity is super powerful. So why don't you take another look at this humdrum image of a salad, but now pretend like you have, you're a 5-year-old. And so what sort of questions might a 5-year-old ask? I mean, my 5-year-old would say something like, why do I have to eat that? But that's a good question, right? Why do humans have to eat vegetables? Cats don't have to eat vegetables, and they're fine. They get glossy fur and bright twinkling eyes after eating, rotten pigeons. So what is about salad that, us mugs have to devour as if it's going out of fashion? And, you could ask all sorts of other questions like, why those vegetables, and why are they green? And what does it mean for something to be green? If it's green, that means it's reflecting wavelengths of light that are interpreted as green by my brain. But how do I know if my brain's green is the same as your brain's green? I mean, the likelihood is that it's not the same, because we don't have the same brain. So there is no consistent green. And now all of a sudden, my mind is melting out of my ears, because I've just asked a few sort of toddler questions, and I've thought more deeply about the image. I mean, sticking to the green for a minute, you're probably aware that green is coming from the chlorophyll, which is part of the photosynthesis process for the plants. But that means that the plants are reflecting one of the sort of the central bits of light in the electromagnetic spectrum, right? So the plant is absorbing blue and red light at the extremes and spitting out green, which is right in the middle of the spectrum, which is kind of weird. Why would they do that? Some botanists reckon that plants probably evolved, first of all, to be purple because they would have absorbed all the green light and spat out the blue and the red and looked purple. So why they're green now is weird, but fascinating, right? And that's exactly the sort of question that academics do grapple with now. And that's because academics think like children. They think like 5-year-olds, constantly going around saying, what's this all about? Right? I mean, some other childish questions that you could have come up with would include, how is it that I'm able to see through the glass bowl, but I can't put my fist through it, or at least not without hurting myself? You could have asked, where do these vegetables come from originally? I mean, they can all be propagated in the UK nowadays, but tomatoes originally came from Mexico, lettuce from Egypt, cucumbers from India, Pakistan, spring onions from China. So this is a little bowl of pre-industrial globalization. It's a kind of magnificent artifact of human ingenuity. But we tend to just shrug it off as, it's a bowl of salad. Oh, how boring. So there we go. Some things to think about. And most importantly, to think about your thinking about. And the basic message is just slow down, okay? If you are trying to be sort of super quick-witted and come up with answers very, very rapidly, it's almost certain that you are engaged in system one thought, because that's the bit of your brain that just sort of spits out the answer as quickly as possible, right? If someone shows you an image and you just jump to blurting out the first thing that comes to your head, that's system one. You're not actually thinking. And therefore, what your brain is doing is that it's delivering the information that it's been told to prioritize. Okay, so you're basically just becoming like a conduit for the teachers that have told you certain bits of information that they think you should prioritize. But at university, the four most common words you'll ever hear are, what do you think? What do you think? And in order to think for yourself, you have to slow down, right? You don't need to just blurt out the first thing that comes to your head, because that's not you. That's someone else who's implanted this idea in your head. They've not done it like some evil genius. They're not maliciously trying to make you brainwashed and incapable of independent thought. But you can think more deeply. You can build on what they've told you. You can say, well, I'm thinking about this, but I'm also curious about that, right? So you can add to what you've learned. And one of the key things in order to engage system two thought is to just slow down, right? Reflect on what your mind is doing, do a bit of that metacognition, and you'll be amazed at what sort of new insights, what sort of deeper thoughts you can come up with if you get out of the sort of the race. You don't sort of compete with others to be the first to answer, but you just take a breath. Even just a few seconds would be more than enough to slow your thinking down and come up with something more interesting and more personal. Okay, what about the future? Well, so this summer school is not just oriented about developing your brain and your experiences, but also sort of thinking about your future choices, and so that you feel as confident as possible about those choices, whether it's applying to a university in the UK or in the United States, or indeed how to prepare your admission for those universities, or how to get ready for any interviews or admissions tests that you might be having. We've got lots of content around that sort of theme in order to make you feel as confident as possible. Okay, remember what I said earlier, by dint of you being a human being, you're definitely capable. So it becomes a question of, do you know the steps you need to take in order to maximize your chances? Do you have the habits in place that can help you be more likely to succeed than other people? These are the sorts of things that we'll be discussing. Okay, and more generally, you can think about, what are your motivations? This is related to your passions, but what do you actually want to do, and how do you want to do it? You can have a bit of an assessment about what hard work is. Now, this sounds a bit odd, but basically, a lot of people have in their minds that in order to succeed in, say, admission to a university, you have to work hard. Well, I would sort of push back slightly on that. I mean, yes, you have to do a lot of hours of sort of committed, diligent thinking and practicing and writing and reading and stuff like that. But that stuff shouldn't really be work, because the word work is quite alienating. I mean, to use a bit of Marxist philosophy, if we think about work, we tend to get alienated from it because we feel like we're doing it for someone else's benefit, right? You think, I'm reading this book because some psychotic admissions tutor at Oxford wants me to read it, or I'm attending this lecture because everyone at the University of St Andrews is evil and they want me to sit through this painful torture in order to be a better student. No, right? The universities are not full of pain and woe and we don't chain ourselves to desk and read until our eyes bleed in order to have some comparative advantage over someone who's not capable of committing that level. Universities are places of joy and wonder. And so you need to try and strip out the word work from your vocabulary, at least with regards to preparing for university, okay? Because there's an old sort of way of thinking which goes along the lines of, in order to be happy, first of all, I've got to be successful. So I've got to find my success and then ultimately happiness will come. Actually, contemporary psychological research has totally upended that calculation and now says, you know what, happiness comes first, and that's what will lead to success. So if you want to be successful in any endeavor, be it, getting into a university or having a certain career or even earning a particular amount of money, you need to work out what's going to make you happy now, right now, because happy people are more efficient workers, much more productive. They have the right habits. They are healthier, everything about the calculus becomes stronger, stronger, stronger. So this isn't some sort of woo-woo, hippy-dippy nonsense, right? This is just practical mathematics, if you like. If you want to commit your resources to a task more efficiently, stop calling it work. Okay, what you're doing is study or learning or whatever else you want to call it. But the minute you call it work, is the minute you'll start thinking, this is for someone else. This is to keep my teachers off my back. This is to stop my parents from whinging, whatever it is. But it's all sort of another person's perspective that you're considering. Whereas the minute you call it something else, it's all about you. It's wildly selfish. And it should be selfish because this is all about you. These next 2 weeks are all about you. So don't worry about what universities think, worry about what you think and what you care about. And when you've done that, universities will be wildly more interested in you, okay? Because they're not looking for someone to fit in. They're not looking for someone who is, material, the right material, because those metaphors are sort of incredibly unhelpful because they're so wrong, right? For instance, at Oxford, I'm not looking for someone who looks exactly like every other Oxford student, sounds like every other Oxford student. I'm looking for someone who's passionate, independent-minded, critical thinking. In other words, I'm looking for someone who is not pushed out of a mold. I'm looking for someone who's going to break molds. Okay, so do stuff because you care about it. And by the way, that's true of all universities, not just Oxford, for sure. Okay. And then, of course, you can think about whether you're doing everything to help yourself or whether you're actually potentially hindering yourself. So there are certain habits that are quite common amongst teenagers, which are quite self-defeating or can be very self-defeating. So, for example, how much sleep are you getting at the moment? Now, if any of you have heard me before, you're probably absolutely sick of me saying this because I tend to go on about this, but I'm a sleep evangelist in the sense that I think everyone could sleep better. And if they did, the world would probably transform in terms of improvement, because there are a lot of people who are literally torturing themselves by not sleeping well. They're not sleeping enough hours or they're not sleeping consistent hours. And either of those two things will impair your physical and mental health. And so therefore they will obviously impair your ability to study on a sustained basis. So if you're literally torturing yourself because of your poor sleeping habits, then just try as hard as you can to stop doing that, right? Think about what could be getting in the way of your sleeping. Could be any number of things, including diet and screen time and so on and so forth. Right, so there are steps you can take in order to improve your sleep that will improve your chances of getting into universities. Right, it's not as an insignificant component of the whole equation. And then there's things like your diet. You know, your brain is 3% of your body mass, but consumes 20 to 25% of your daily calories, which is mad, right? That's a huge proportion of your calories being absorbed by the 40,000 iPhones in your skull. But fair enough, it's a pretty sort of work hard beast that we've got going on there. So it needs leafy greens, and it needs nuts or oily fish. It needs nutrition, and it needs calories. And so you've got to think about how you deal with those things quite carefully. And then finally, there's hydration. I'm reliably but slightly alarmingly informed that the brain has a texture very similar to butter. Sorry, I know that's really gross on a Monday morning, but the brain is 80% water. So an even higher percentage of your brain is water than the rest of your body. And so it needs lots of water as well, right? So you've got to make sure you're well hydrated is another thing. So, you know, think about your motivations, but also think about the things that you're doing in your life other than your work, your academic work, although we're forgetting the word work, remember, that could be inhibiting your study or your learning or whatever other adjectives you want to use. Okay. Finally, you know, be kind to your inner toddler. It's very easy, as I mentioned earlier, to sort of be very stern and say, well, you don't understand this because you're stupid, right? And this is the sort of the internal voice in your head. But that's not going to help you. It's also entirely inaccurate to try and be kind to that inner child. You should also be hungry as far as possible. All right, sorry, just bear with me. He's not. Oh, just bear with me. Okay. Oh, that's all right. Good. Sorry about that. Let's get back to the slides. Yeah, so be hungry because you know, there's lots of things that you can do, especially in the next 2 weeks. But generally speaking, you know, there's a lot that you can do in order to develop your skills. This is a fairly shameless plug, so I apologize, but we've got a YouTube channel for Jesus College Oxford, which contains a lot of the material from previous summer schools. In fact, the YouTube channel was started from material that we took from previous summer schools. So it's got a lot of the lectures, and it's got a lot of the application advice sort of stuff from previous summer schools. Obviously, this year's summer school is all new and is all sort of reworked and much better. But if you want to go back through some of the material, there's a lot of stuff on YouTube there to help you out as well. Okay, cool. So where to next? Well, next is just simply to say diolch yn fawr. And I really look forward to working with you over the next 2 weeks. Keep in touch and let us know what you need. In terms of your immediate next step, well, at 10 o'clock, which is only in a few minutes, you've got some fantastic things going on. So Thomas has already mentioned he's got a session. They've got a session which looks fantastic. And then we've got Karis on how to build a habitable planet, and James on the eradication of parasitic diseases, and Gito on solving the unsolvable. So really fascinating sessions to go and have a look at. I really hope you enjoy it. Thank you again so much for coming along. Really, really appreciate it. And yeah, let us know how we can make this the best possible experience for you all. But yeah, cheers everyone. Diolch.